Father's Day.
Likewise.
And you know what a wonderful day to celebrate God's sacred creation on Father's Day. We'll celebrate our Heavenly Father's Day. And talking about creation, I tried a little science experiment once where I took a handful of sand in a plastic bag, threw in a couple of coins and a piece of old broken jewelry, and I shook it. And I shook it for a while. Because a handful of sand and the coins in that plastic bag, I thought if I shook it, maybe I'd get something more, but nothing. Because you see, all of those are actually the ingredients that make up a high-end computer. The copper, the little bit of silver, a few other trace metals in there, and a lot of the silicone that's in the sand. But in all of that, I didn't get anything. It was still just a handful of sand and a bunch of coins. And no matter how hard I get it to transform, a computer never came out of that. Because to get a computer out of that, it takes a lot of melting, purifying, mixing, etching, burning, and planning. It's not just a random bunch of events. So I hope that you see some of the parallels. That a powerful high-end computer that's capable of taking astronauts to the moon and doing all of their calculations in life comes from what seemingly is rather useless ingredients, almost worthless. But when an outside hand takes those ingredients and rearranges them for a higher purpose, it suddenly becomes a lot more valuable. If you take all the basic parts of us and you put it in a bag and shook it, you would never, ever really come up with a person. For the same reason that you would never come up with a computer with a bag of sand. Our ingredients are really rather common. Most of us come from what you find in dirt, hence created from dust. And I think that it's calculated out that all of the ingredients in the human body, if you take the chemicals out, it's worth about $40-ish. But we're not just a random occurrence. And whether you believe in 6 days or 6 billion years, you cannot stand here without knowing that a guiding hand, the guiding hand of God, is what created us. Without the guiding hand of God, we would still just be a random handful of chemicals. God's sacred creation was the first transformation for us. We were transformed from a bunch of common ingredients into being human. The creation of our bodies is a miracle to marvel. And the more I read medical books, the more I realize what a miracle it is, that it couldn't just be random. The complication of the computer that I talk about pales in comparison just how complicated even the most basic cell in your body is. The intricate biomechanical machine that we are, that we call our human body. And the whole blueprint of this is only from a handful of common amino acids arranged in a specific way that creates the blueprint to make your entire being. When you stop and count how many things your body can do, try to imagine how difficult it would be for us to build a machine that do what you do. I mean, look at it. Your hands are a thermometer. You're self-propelled. You can diagnose your own malfunctions. You can fuel yourself from what's around you in your environment. We're reproductive. We're self-repairing. We're waterproof. We can judge distance. We can sense sound and light. We can regulate our own internal temperatures. And the list is really extensive. And I don't think we would ever be able to reproduce a machine that's the size of us that does everything that our bodies can do. But that's only one transformation. We were dust of the earth, a few common chemicals, stacked together to create the wonder that is you. But that's not the best part. Because let me go back to that computer again for a minute. Sure, it's a lot of neat blinking lights and buttons and keyboards and whirring sounds and does a lot of cool stuff, but without its program, it's really not worth that much anymore. I mean, if you go out and buy a computer, it's really rather cheap until you buy all the things that go into it. And to have an example of this, we have computers on our airplanes, and there's one computer that we had. It's got a window on top of the airplane so that you can see the moon and the stars and the sun. You can see the stars even in daylight. And what it does is it uses all the inputs from the rest of the airplane, looking at the stars, to calculate out exactly where we're at. So it doesn't even need GPS. It knows where the airplane is, and with the navigator telling it where we want to go and how to get there, it steers the airplane, it does everything. Well, there were times that we've had like power surges in the airplane or like a lightning strike or something, and it erases all of the program from that computer. And once that program is gone, then really that box just becomes worthless weight that makes more fuel to carry it around. And it becomes as useless as that handful of sand that it was created from. It could still see the stars, but he didn't know what they were. It still had all the connections to steer the airplane, but he didn't know how to move all the components and know where it was going. Like I said, it just became another useless weight. But I think that that's about the time where you realize that most computers really aren't valuable. It's what's inside them that makes them valuable. The programming that makes them valuable. That programming that transforms it. It's the programming that made Bill Gates worth $50 billion. You know, most new computers really aren't this astronomical breakthrough. What they are is they're a faster version of what the previous one was. There's no new magic that happens to them. They just get a little smaller and a little faster. Our bodies, the wonders that they are really just a shell for what's inside us. What's the valuable part of us? Our souls. Some bodies are fast, some are slow, some don't work very well, but it's still not the most important part. And as an example, you think about the most brilliant, celebrated scientist of our generation is in a wheelchair and can't talk. The body is of little value without a soul. We can keep a heart beating in a body. And if you remember back when they first discovered electricity, they realized that they could even make a dead body move its limbs and sit up. That's where the story of Frankenstein came from, where they thought that electricity would reanimate a life. But they couldn't reanimate it without a soul. Because without a soul, it's really not worth much more than the dust that it was created from. That's pretty much where the analogy of my computer and the machine ends. Because a computer just does what you tell it. You know, I've often thought about, I either write my sermons in a book, but lately I've been typing more and more of them in a computer. And I thought about, instead of bringing paper up here, loading it into a tablet or onto my phone or being able to read it that way. Of course, then there's a fear of the battery going dead and you having to win it. But still, it does exactly what I tell it to do. And if I put my whole sermon in here and I just hit the little button that says share, this little phone could preach to the world. But it still only does what I've told it to do. On the contrary, I could also load very vile things into here, and people write horrible things on the internet. And they hit that little button share. And was it the computer or the phone that preached to the world? did what we told it to do. It doesn't have a choice. We, on the other hand, have a choice about what we do in our lives. We have a choice, and that was a gift from God, our Creator. When we refer to creation and being transformed, we refer to being changed for the better. Others might call it being saved or being born again. One person might, when you're born again, you begin to act different. You see people with a lighter disposition. They have a fresh start, a fresh feel, because they know that all of their worries, their guilt, are no more weighing them down, holding their soul back. There are so many reasons to be transformed, and so many reasons that a Christian are different. One is the confidence that you feel about yourself, and you know that you can make a difference and that you can accomplish things in life. The confidence that you feel comes from the Lord, and that feeling of belonging, that feeling of faith. The love that you feel that comes from Christ makes you know that you have value, that you're worth a lot more than just a handful of sand. You're more than just a sum of dust. The Creator has created you, and you're special. You're special enough to be loved by the Son of God and by God. If you're that wonderful, then you know that you're worthy of the loving. You know that you're worthy of the love of God, and you know that that makes you worthy to love others. Loving others and being loved gives you a sense of belonging. That you know that you're really part of something else. That it's much easier to believe in something when you see others going along. Belonging is truly a powerful force. That feeling of belonging is such a powerful force that all of our advertisers use it. I mean, look at the commercials. Buy the #1 selling car in America. Join the millions of people that just switched to AT&T. Find out why everybody's talking about such and such a show. Or wouldn't you like to be a Dr. Pepper too? Belonging is also the peer pressure that can drag us away from God. You know, think back. When I was in high school, the people that didn't smoke and didn't drink were kind of ostracized. They weren't invited to all the hangouts and all the cool places. And if you didn't feel like, and you just felt like you didn't belong if you weren't doing what they were doing. And because of that, you usually found yourself doing things that you knew you weren't raised to be doing. But when you're the only Christian in a crowd, that you can get that additional strength to stand by yourself, because you know that you're not alone. You're not the only one in that crowd, because you have Christ there with you. And because you have Christ, you are part of the crowd. God is always around us, always unseen, but always felt. Faith tells you that He's near and enables you to feel His love that He has for you. Love and belonging gives you confidence that reassures your faith. How are we transformed? It seems like just being born. It seems there are just some that are born believing. Others seem to seek God when they're at their lowest point in life. I've seen a lot of different people when I was in the military, and I've seen severe alcoholics take huge turns in their lives. It seemed like they knew that they were lacking something in their life, and they didn't know exactly what it was, but But they always tried to use something else to fill that void. And a lot of times they turned to more alcohol. And since it didn't fill the void, they tried more and more. Until finally they hit rock bottom and realized that they needed to make a change in their lives. And the change was like a flick of a switch. It was like they went from one addiction to the other, because once you taste the fruit of the Lord, then you just want more. Some people come to God out of tragedy, but they have something so horrible happen in their lives that they knew that the only way that they escaped it was that they had divine intervention. Some just experiment and try coming to church, and they read a few scriptures, and then they realize how much more powerful life is with God in it. The new experiences. There was once, I was at a dinner with my family, and my new 14-month-old nephew was sitting at the end of the table. And when dessert came out, this molten cake with chocolate syrup all over it, and then cold ice cream on top. Oh, those are so good. Well, I took a little spoonful of it, and I put it in my nephew's mouth that was sitting beside me. And at first he fussed a little bit about, why is somebody putting something in my mouth? And then his eyes widened, and he shook. And then he started trying to climb out of his high chair to get across the table to whatever this wonderful thing was that he just had put in his mouth. It's like tasting chocolate for the first time. You didn't know what it was going to be like until you had it. But then once you had it, you could never imagine what life is like without it. And you'll do anything to get more. Of course, I'm a chocoholic. In any case, no two people have the same exact story of how they were transformed. But in this case, it's not so much the means as it is the end. And again, unlike a computer, we have a choice of what we want to do with our hearts. And we make a conscious choice to become saved, to give up self-gratification for a higher purpose. At one time, the early European Christians tried torturing non-believers into joining the church. But God doesn't want people pushed into believing, you know? It's like that child at the family reunion. Does anybody want that child to be forced to come up and hug you? Or is it so much more wonderful when they come running up on their own to hug you? Luckily, humans can't take away the gift of agency that the Lord has given us. It's a gift that nobody can ever take away from you. It makes our transformation more special to God because we chose to follow Him out of free will. In a perfect world, our transformation would be easy. Once explained the path, we would just choose to follow that road. It would be easy if it weren't for all the obstacles in our way. There is so much temptation and obstacles that keep us away from following the path of the Lord that we often find ourselves worshiping our idols. We declare our luxuries our necessities, and we find ourselves envying those who have more luxuries than we do. And we convince ourselves that we just need to have them. Oftentimes, it's the status that we place on our material things that occupies us more than in our pursuit in seeking the kingdom. It's our modern idol worship. And if you lost all that you had, would you have the strength of Job? When Job lost all that he had, everything, his family, his wealth, he still had the strength to praise God. What if the Lord put you to a test the same way? Would you have that strength? Both us and computers are created from nothing more than the dust of the earth. both us and computers, have something inside us that makes us special, more valuable than the parts that make us. But unlike computers, we have the ability to choose what we do with ourselves. We have the ability to choose what we say to other people. Unlike computers, who can be programmed and erased, we were promised eternal life for our soul. With all the love, faith, and belonging that we have with the transformation of our souls, that faith keeps us on the path. There are many distractions that seem to want to pull us from our transformation. But one thought that will help us make all those obstructions seem insignificant. That the obstacles in your path are only fleeting and temporary, but your transformation in your soul and your creation.